What happens when one of music's most legendary icons sits down with daytime television's most notorious panel and everything goes catastrophically wrong? You won't believe what unfolds when decades of pent-up Hollywood frustrations explode live on national television. This is the story of how a routine promotional appearance became the most explosive confrontation in The View's history. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what happens when Cher faces off against the hosts in what can only be described as television warfare. The tension was palpable from the moment Cher stepped onto the View set. What should have been a lighthearted conversation about her new memoir quickly turned into something far more sinister. The veteran performer, known for speaking truth to power, had no idea she was walking into the most heated confrontation of her career. It started innocently enough. Cher settled into the guest chair, her signature confidence radiating as the cameras rolled. The host seemed friendly at first, offering practiced smiles and rehearsed banter. Joy Behar opened with what appeared to be a softball question about Cher's legendary career. But there was something in her tone that suggested this wouldn't be the usual celebrity love fest. "So Cher, you've been in this business for over 5 decades. Joy began, her voice carrying an undertone that immediately put the icon on alert. "You've seen a lot of changes in Hollywood. How have you managed to stay relevant all these years?" The word relevant hung in the air like a challenge. Cher's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing the subtle dig hidden in what should have been a compliment. She leaned back, her decades of experience in handling hostile interviews kicking in. "Well, Joy, I think staying authentic has been key," Cher responded, measured but edged with firmness. "I've never felt the need to manufacture drama or controversy for attention. My work speaks for itself." The cameras caught a brief exchange of glances between the hosts. Whoopi Goldberg shifted uncomfortably. Sarah Haynes forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sunony host leaned forward like a predator sensing weakness, and Alyssa Farrah Griffin's jaw tightened. Anna Navarro, filling in as the 5th host, decided to escalate further. "That's an interesting point," she said. "Some people might say your recent social media activity has been controversial. You've been vocal about certain political figures." The studio seemed to drop several degrees in temperature. Cher straightened, warning signs visible to those who knew her well. She had dealt with decades of attempts to silence her, and she wasn't backing down now. "I've always used my platform to speak up for what I believe in," Cher said, her voice gaining strength. "If that makes some people uncomfortable, that's their problem, not mine." Joy leaned forward aggressively, her polite facade starting to crack. "But don't you think celebrities should stick to entertaining and leave politics to politicians?" The question dripped with condescension. Cher felt the familiar fire building in her chest. She had heard this tired argument countless times, usually from people who had never risked their careers or faced threats for standing by their beliefs. That's rich coming from a show that built its brand on political commentary. Cher shot back, her voice slicing through the studio air. Whoopi tried to interject with her patronizing tone. "Now Cher, we're just trying to have a conversation here, are we not?" Cher challenged her, sass beginning to surface. "Because it feels more like an interrogation designed to make me look bad." The hosts exchanged more glances, their coordinated attack growing obvious. Sarah Haynes jumped in, thinking she had a knockout punch. "Well, speaking of looking bad, there have been some rumors about your personal life lately. Care to address those?" The studio fell silent, save for the hum of cameras. Cher's eyes flashed with a dangerous mix of hurt and fury. She had come to promote her book and share her story and, instead, found herself under attack from women who claimed to champion female empowerment. "Excuse me," Cher said. "Deadly compa, kind of quiet that precedes a storm. What exactly are you implying?" Sunany, sensing momentum, twisted the knife further. "We're just saying that for someone who preaches authenticity, there seem to be a lot of questions about your private relationships and business dealings." The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Cher felt decades of media manipulation, endless attempts to diminish her accomplishments, and constant scrutiny crystallizing into pure rage. These women, sitting behind their desk with fake smiles and calculated cruelty, represented everything she had been fighting against her entire career. "You want to talk about authenticity?" Cher's voice rose, her famous temper finally unleashed. "Let's talk about the authenticity of a show that pretends to support women while systematically tearing them down on national television." The hosts tried to maintain composure, but cracks were beginning to show. Anna Navarro's face flushed red, and Joy's mouth tightened into a thin line. They had clearly expected Cher to be compliant, more willing to play their game. "We're not tearing anyone down," Whoopi protested, though her voice lacked conviction. "We're asking legitimate questions." "Legitimate questions?" Cher laughed bitterly. "You call spreading unsubstantiated rumors and questioning my integrity legitimate journalism? This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that's destroying meaningful discourse in this country." The studio atmosphere had shifted from uncomfortable to openly hostile. Camera operators adjusted to capture every moment, while producers in the control room realized they were witnessing television history in the making. Joy, perhaps feeling the need to regain control, made a critical error. Look, Cher, we understand you're passionate about your beliefs, but maybe it's time to accept that your moment has passed. The words hit Cher like a physical blow. After decades of being told she was too old, too outspoken, too much, she reached her breaking point. The mask of professionalism slipped completely, revealing the warrior beneath. My moment has passed. Cher's voice trembled with barely contained fury. I've been breaking barriers and fighting battles while you were still figuring out how to read a teleprompter without sounding like robots. The hosts realized they'd gone too far, but it was too late to retreat. The damage was done, and Cher was just getting started. The simmering confrontation was about to explode, and the cameras captured every devastating second. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the mechanical hum of cameras adjusting to capture the raw emotion on Cher's face. Her hands trembled with rage, her carefully applied makeup doing nothing to hide the fire in her eyes. The hosts sat frozen, suddenly aware that they had cornered a legend who had survived an industry that ate people alive. Sarah Haynes tried to defuse the situation. Cher, I think we're all getting a little heated here. Maybe we should take a breath. Don't you dare tell me to take a breath. Cher cut her off, her voice like ice. You want to sit there and question my relevance, my integrity? Let me tell you something about relevance, sweetheart. I was selling out arenas before you were born, and I'll be doing it long after this pathetic excuse for journalism is forgotten. Ana Navarro leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. There's no need to get personal. Cher, we're professionals here. Professionals. Cher's laugh was sharp and bitter. You call this professional? Ambushing a guest with manufactured controversies and thinly veiled insults. You wouldn't know professionalism if it bit your fake personalities. The crude words sent shockwaves through the studio. The View had seen heated exchanges before, but nothing like this. Whoopi tried to regain control, her voice authoritative. Okay, that's enough. We need to keep this civil. Civil. Cher's eyes blazed. Where was the civility when you were spreading rumors about my personal life? Where was the civility when you questioned my business dealings without a shred of evidence? You want to play dirty, but you can't handle it when someone fights back. Joy, flushed with anger and embarrassment, doubled down. Maybe this is exactly why people are questioning your stability. This kind of outburst doesn't scream professional icon. The words hit like a slap. Cher's mouth dropped in disbelief before her expression hardened into something truly dangerous. She stood, towering over the panel, her presence filling the studio with electric tension. My stability. Her voice was dangerously quiet. Now you want to question my stability. I've survived blacklisting, death threats, industry sexism, decades of people trying to silence me, and you think your little mean girls club is going to break me. Sunny host, emboldened by what she perceived as support from her co-hosts, made perhaps the most catastrophic decision of the entire confrontation. Well, given your history of dramatic relationships and public meltdowns, it's not exactly unreasonable to stop right there. Cher's voice cut through the studio like a whip crack. Don't you dare bring my relationships into this. Don't you dare pretend my personal life is fair game for your ratings grab. The mask was completely off now. The legendary performer who had maintained grace under pressure for 5 decades was done playing nice. Her voice rose, making everyone in the studio flinch. You want to know what's unreasonable? What's unreasonable is a group of women who claim to champion female empowerment, spending their time tearing down other women for sport. What's unreasonable is pretending this is journalism when it's nothing but glorified gossip disguised as news. Ana Navarro tried one last time to salvage the situation, but her approach only poured gasoline on the fire. Cher, we understand you're upset, but attacking us personally isn't attacking me personally. Cher's eyes were wild now, her voice reaching a crescendo that reverberated through the studio. You just spent the last 10 minutes attacking everything about me, and now you want to play the victim. The hypocrisy is staggering. The hosts began to panic. This had gone far beyond what they had planned, and they could see their careers flashing before their eyes. Joy tried to redirect. Look, we're sorry if you feel we were unfair, but if I feel, Cher's voice cracked with incredulous rage. There's no if about it. You ambushed me with lies and innuendo, questioned my character without evidence, and now you're gaslighting me by pretending it's all in my head. Whoopi, perhaps realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, tried to assert authority. Cher, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. You're going to ask me. Cher's laugh was harsh and bitter. You're going to ask me to lower my voice after you all ganged up on me like a pack of vultures. The audacity is breathtaking. Sarah Haynes, tears forming from the stress, made one final plea. We never meant for this to get so heated. We were just trying to have a conversation. A conversation. Cher's voice rose to levels that made sound engineers scramble. This wasn't a conversation. This was a coordinated attack designed to humiliate me on national television. And you know what the saddest part is? You probably thought I'd just sit here and take it like some meek little victim. The confrontation had reached a fever pitch. Cher stood magnificent in her fury, facing down 5 women who had clearly underestimated who they were dealing with. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Ana Navarro, realizing retreat was impossible, tried one last stand. Well, if you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. The words barely left her mouth before Cher erupted. The legendary icon had reached her absolute breaking point. Can't handle tough questions. Cher's voice erupted like a volcano, shaking the studio. Tough questions. You call spreading lies and manufacturing drama tough questions. You wouldn't know a tough question if it slapped you across your Botoxed faces. The hosts recoiled, as if physically struck. The raw power of Cher's voice, honed by decades of commanding massive audiences, filled every corner of the studio. Camera operators instinctively stepped back, while producers in the control room watched in stunned silence as television history unfolded. Joy Bay, her face now red with anger and humiliation, made the fatal mistake of trying to match Cher's energy. Don't you dare talk to us like that. We've been doing this show for years. Cher's laugh was terrifying. I've been in this business longer than all of you combined. I was breaking barriers and changing the world while you were still learning how to read cue cards. And you think your little daytime talk show gives you the right to tear me down. Whoopi stood, hoping her presence would assert control. A catastrophic miscalculation. Sit your ass back down. Whoopi, Cher snapped. You, of all people, should know better. You're supposed to be the voice of reason on this show, but instead, you're just another cog in their mean girl machine. The studio was in complete chaos. Security shifted nervously at the edges of the set, unsure whether to intervene. The hosts looked like deer caught in headlights, their carefully constructed personas crumbling under the weight of Cher's assault. Sunny host, tears streaming down her face, made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Sure, please. We can work this out. We don't have to work this out. Cher's voice reached decibels that threatened to blow out the sound equipment. There's nothing to work out. You showed me exactly who you are at the moment I walked through that door. You're nothing but vultures, feeding on other people's pain for your pathetic ratings. Sarah Haynes was openly sobbing now, completely overwhelmed by the confrontation. Ana Navarro sat frozen, her face pale with shock at what she had helped unleash. The woman who had triggered Cher's explosion looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. You want to know what tough questions look like? Cher continued, her voice carrying the weight of decades of accumulated rage. Here's a tough question. How do you sleep at night knowing you make your living destroying other women? Here's another. What kind of example are you setting for young girls watching this show? Joy tried to interrupt, but Cher silenced her with a look that could have melted steel. I'm not finished. Her words echoed through the studio like gunshots. You think because you sit behind that desk with fake smiles and coordinated attacks that you're untouchable. You think you can ambush me and I'll just sit here like some washed-up has-been? Cher moved closer to the desk, her presence commanding the space. The host shrank back as if facing a force of nature. Let me tell you something about washed-up has-been. I've sold over 100 million records worldwide. I've won every major award in entertainment. I've used my platform to fight for civil rights, LGBTQ+ rights, and social justice when it was dangerous to do so. What have you done besides tear down women who are better than you? The silence that followed was deafening. Even the crew stopped moving, transfixed by the raw power of Cher's words. The legendary performer stood magnificent in her fury, having stripped away every pretense and revealed the ugly truth beneath the view's polished surface. Whoopi made one final attempt to regain control. Sure, I think we should. Cher's voice was deadly quiet, somehow more terrifying than when she had been shouting. You don't get to think anything. You've done enough thinking for one day, and look where it got us. She turned to the cameras, addressing the audience directly. To everyone watching at home, this is what happens when fake journalism meets real integrity. This is what happens when mediocrity tries to tear down excellence. And this, she gestured toward the cowering hosts, is what cowardice looks like when it's finally called out. The camera captured every nuance of her expression as she delivered one of the most quoted moments in television history. I came here today to talk about my book, to share my story with people who might find inspiration. Instead, I walked into an ambush orchestrated by women who have forgotten what it means to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. Cher began gathering her belongings, deliberate and dignified despite the chaos she was leaving in her wake. You know the difference between me and all of you. She paused, looking at each host in turn. I've never had to destroy another woman to feel good about myself. I've never spread lies and rumors to stay relevant. And I've never had to hide behind a desk and gang up on someone to feel powerful. Ana Navarro, realizing this was her last chance, made a desperate plea. Sure, wait, we can what? Cher's voice cut through the air like a blade. Pretend this didn't happen. Pretend you didn't just reveal your true characters on national television. The damage is done, ladies. You've shown the world exactly who you are. Cher stood at the edge of the set, her silhouette framed by the studio lights, looking every inch the icon she was. I've survived 5 decades in this business by being authentic, standing up for what I believe in, and never letting bullies silence my voice. You tried to break me today, but all you did was remind me why I've never backed down from a fight." With that, Cher turned and walked toward the exit, head held high, dignity intact. Despite the chaos behind her, the host sat in stunned silence, their carefully orchestrated ambush having backfired spectacularly. As she reached the studio door, Cher turned back one final time, her voice carrying clearly across the silent set. "Good luck explaining this to your viewers. Good luck explaining how you turned what should have been a celebration of a woman's career into a character assassination. And good luck living with yourselves, knowing the whole world just watched you reveal who you really are." The door closed behind her with a decisive click, leaving the hosts in the wreckage of their show. The cameras continued rolling, capturing their shocked faces and the toxic atmosphere they had created. What had started as a routine celebrity interview had become a masterclass in how legends are made and reputations are shattered. Cher had walked into their trap and turned it into their nightmare, emerging victorious, her integrity and legendary status more solid than ever.